those that stick their head in the sand benefit. You know why they benefit? They benefit from shying away from the responsibility. See what Noble said, this is a great time. Out of disillusion, out of death, life springs up. And death is nothing but disintegration and disillusion. So this is a great time. This is one of the greatest times to turn this thing around for the better. But it takes the idea, and then it takes some guts. It takes some courage.
The Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel writes that there are no innocent bystanders. So there are no innocent bystanders. And when we ask our young men, our boys, when we tell them when they fall down, man up, get up, man up, we're creating this culture where we expect men to participate in a certain way that just perpetuates this violence. So we aren't innocent. We may stick our head in the sand, but we're still talking. We're still communicating these ideals that say, in order to be a real man, you must be violent. You can't cry. You can't cry when you fall down. That's not a man.
We're going to move on to substance abuse, and Sharif, you touched a little bit on the networking part of organizations and jails, and the question is, what is the significance of drugs in and on gang life? And before the panel jumps into that one, I just want to tell the audience I was in a meeting today where the Commissioner of Health was the guest speaker, where she, if anyone can go online and see on the Onondaga County Health Department's website their health assessment for the year that was done. Syracuse leads the state more than 4-1 from here, Syracuse versus the Bronx. 4-1, we are the leader in the state of babies born to addicted to drugs, drug-dependent babies. 4-1. So, what is the significance of drugs in or on gang life?
Well, when you talk about a community that's living under the canopy of trauma. See, the human mind is a wonderful thing, right? When you study it. But we're at a place right now where to deny the trauma, people will black out because the experience is too horrifying. So to deal with that trauma, they start to try to shift the paradigm to live under an altered state of consciousness because they can't take it anymore. When you have 12-year-old babies that could smoke formaldehyde, right? They're trying to suppress some level of pain.
Everyone might not know what you're referring to. That's water, right?
Yeah, water. They're trying to suppress some level of pain, right? So they even know that they can't deal with what's going on a day-to-day basis. So drugs go hand in hand. A lot of these people, if you pay attention to a lot of the court cases that's been going on, which the judge don't really care, but some of these young people been high, right? On mind-altering substances, then they wake up in a jail cell like, oh, I did what? Right? But it's too late after that because they keep using and keep using. So the whole drug culture is big. It goes hand in hand when you talk about pills, the water, the marijuana, the liquor, so on and so forth, because they just can't cope. And that's their way of blacking out from the situation. And some people can't even get through a day without it. All this stuff we talking about happens fast. It's not year to year, this week to week. Right? So the human mind doesn't have the capacity at this point to deal with it. So it's shut down. And now you have a neighborhood or neighborhoods full of zombies just walking around disillusioned, like a Thriller, like Michael Jackson Thriller video.
With access to guns.
With access to guns. With the trauma heaped on top of it. Right? Give your neighbor a hug.
Please. I wanted to actually step back for a quick second. We were talking about there's a benefit to a lot of the things that we're doing that are perpetuating the issue, and it segues right into the whole drug thing. Bottom line is suppression is big business. The wording of the 13th Amendment, this is for those, our younger people in here, understand. 13th Amendment says slavery nor involuntary servitude, except for a crime for which one has been duly convicted of. Except is the big word. Shall exist in the United States or the territories it controls. So, if you're under police supervision, if you're locked up, slavery is legal. If you do the things that get you there, that makes it, it's no longer involuntary servitude, it's voluntary. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. So, we all know in terms of the history how drugs became involved with criminal or with street crew organizations. Most street crew organizations, almost all of them, whether they're in urban America or other places, like the triads in China, like the mafia in Italy and other places, they started as grassroots self-help organizations for protection and other things on the grassroots political level. That's how they started. But what ends up happening? Power corrupts. And if you have a source of income, that begins to change the game. And that's what happened with the influx of drugs, especially with the crack era, you know, with crack from you know, the Free Ricky Ross situation. How many are familiar with Ricky Ross's story? The real Rick Ross, by the way. The real one. How many of you familiar? You familiar with Daniello Blandone? I'll say his name. Okay. The CIA agent that was doubling with the Contras in crack all across the country. Well, anyway, that you know, that became a major source of funding for street crew level activities. Of course, you're dealing with individuals that have deep-seated trauma that need to medicate themselves. So the product then also becomes their medication, and then you have issues inside the street crew organizations. Early on, you know, there were strict rules when you had tiered structured leadership that you don't get high on your own supply. You don't participate. Some street crew organizations forbid the use of certain, or the sale or distribution of certain hard drugs in their neighborhood. Some did that as well. Now, to touch on the drug thing too with regards to the violence, we're so used to marrying the idea of violence with gang activity because of our fear of violence or fear of the threat of violence. It is my understanding and my strong opinion that the upsurge, that the strong surge in violence that we're seeing is not so much gang related, but is directly related to these synthetic drugs and the availability. How many of you are familiar with the fact that these synthetic drugs are not turning up in drug tests? So you've got people, young men and women under police supervision, high out of their minds. And it's not turning up. They can't detect it. And these synthetic drugs are psychotic. Even the so-called weed or spice, it doesn't, you know, the chemicals don't copy the THC effect. It mimics it, but it has another extra punch, and that is psychosis inducing. That's what it is. So like the brother just said, literally less than a generation from now, I would say if we don't do something in the next 5 years, we are really looking at a very real zombie apocalypse.
I want to go back a little bit to the using drugs as an escape and not really teaching our youth how to handle crisis and how to deal with things that are going on. And when you have students walking into schools that have faced a trauma at home that morning, and we expect them to sit there and learn multiplication tables, and we criminalize them, we yell at them, we punish them, we send them to the principal's office because they haven't been able to do that, and we don't give them the social emotional skills to be able to work through those problems until they get in a state of crisis. And then we have a counselor that, to no fault of their own, has a caseload that is unmanageable, so they can't do more than a crisis management in that situation, if that. And then the paperwork that we expect young people who want to get off of drugs and want to get help and walk into centers where they are expecting to do that, and they're expecting the support to do that, and we expect them to sit there and fill out paperwork and sit there and go through these rigorous, oftentimes seemingly judgmental questioning, and we're not supporting them in this process. We're not making it accessible, and we're not helping.
That was real good. Before I started my own business, I was actually drug educator for the state through Prevention Network for years. So drugs, one of my favorite topics to actually talk about. And in a weird way, yes. When I go to schools, as I said, I love talking about drugs. I love drugs. Anywho, it's a fascinating topic. But I'm going to lean towards, I'm going to bring on my youth pastor in me and talk about how I talked earlier about how I think gangs, a lot of us, we don't have that love, we don't feel accepted. That's why a lot of kids join gangs to kind of feel accepted, feel loved. So it's also my theory with drugs is so rampant in any area, it doesn't matter what town, what city you're in, it's rampant across any age, is because we're lacking something inside. Just like that same thing that's lacking inside from wanting to join a gang to get accepted, they're lacking something inside now, so they turn to drugs to fill that void. So no matter what your religion is or whatever it is, certain people think only God can fill that void, and that's my purpose. But whatever it is, I think we need to get to our youth and say, there's something else out there that can only fill that void. What happened is for you, and that's how to reach them with the drugs. Because I believe drugs is so rampant in this society of all ages and all groups. It's because we're all missing that something inside us that needs to be filled, and we're looking to fill it. And that's how addictions even starts, is when you're looking for that. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
I think also, I know it's an influx amongst the young people, but a lot of, I don't know if we have any like substance abuse counselors and such in the room, but I'm quite sure sometimes the family history of drug use comes into play. Noble touched on the effects of crack in the community and the damage it has done, but also genetically, because those things become embedded in someone's DNA code, so that need to escape whenever they're faced with pressure, and those traumatizing experiences and the things that's going on in their life, no one to talk to, no one to help them cope, help them heal. Also, that's that lack of that self-confidence, that self-esteem, and that longing for identity and purpose. One thing I figured out years ago, just from studying and just being a student of life, I was having a conversation with a young woman about spirituality and where that's at on the spectrum of us as human beings, and how when you have a solid foundation spiritually and understand who you are, what you stand for, what it is you're looking to accomplish, you have that system in place of a retreat, so to speak. You have something to fall back on, whether that's talking to someone, getting advice, whether that's doing yoga, praying, meditating, whatever it is. In the universe, it's always a balance. It's hot, cold, that type of stuff. So now, when you don't have that, you're longing. That's an addictive nature. You're looking for something to attach yourself to that helps you identify who you are, how you are feeling. And that's what drugs do on that opposite end. So now you get men, women feeling invincible on certain drugs. It brings out their we call it inhibitions. It brings out certain emotions and evokes certain emotions when people are on substances. You have to take an outside substance and put it in your body to help you define something. You have a problem expressing who you are. You have a problem expressing yourself. It's a lack of that. So it's something lacking, and our jobs is to, help young people figure out what it is that they're lacking in their life. Even though we may know, but it'll help strengthen them and empower them if we help them figure it out, so they'll know, when those obstacles and those circumstances they're faced with again, they know what to do with it. It's like being trained in combat sports.